Well, welcome to the Weight Watchers Show, the podcast where you can find out everything you need to know about late and slow payments to small business. My name is Terry Corby, as you know, and I'm the founder of Good Business Pays. And today is a special episode, episode 8. We're talking about something that is big news. Last week, many of you will have read of the government and the Department for Business and Trade's plans to bring in a package of measures to tackle late payments. That's big news. We're going to unpack that a little bit. And the other big news since the last Weight Watchers show is we have a new Small Business Commissioner, and we're lucky to have Emma Jones, the new Small Business Commissioner, with us today. Welcome to you, Emma.
Thank you very much, Terry. Delighted to be here.
So my first question is, you come from the world of enterprise. Actually, we come from a similar stable. We're both Anderson alumni from gone back, but in particular, you're a very entrepreneurial person, come from Enterprise Nation. What persuaded you to jump the fence and go into an arm's length body as opposed to an entrepreneurial one? First question. And you're 6 weeks into the role. What's it been like?
Well, thank you very much again, Terry, for the opportunity, because regardless of whether I was still in the private sector or in this role, I've always had huge respect for what Good Business Pays does. So delighted to be here. So yes, what attracted me to the role? Well, it's interesting, and you may have heard me say this before, Terry, is when the role actually came up 4 years ago, when Liz Barkley took on the role. I remember seeing it advertised, and I thought, oh, if I wasn't running a business, I'd love to do that job. And my business, which, as you rightly say, is Enterprise Nation, I'd done a share disposal of Enterprise Nation in 2023, and I'd stayed on in role as CEO and founder. But then I saw that the Small Business Commissioner job had come up again. And so I kind of looked at it and was like, oh, well, okay, now this is an opportunity that I could potentially, I'm at the right point where I could make a move out of the business and into a new role. And I suppose there were a couple of things that attracted me to it, and it kind of leads into your question around 7 weeks in, how is it? So far, it hasn't disappointed on the reasons why I was quite keen to take on the position at this time. One of them being something I'd been talking about for years at Enterprise Nation was how do we leverage open finance in the UK? And I can see on your beautiful backdrop, you've got Intuit, NatWest, Mastercard, Barclays, all of these amazing businesses that have got so much incredible transaction data on small businesses. I always used to question, how come we're not using that data better in order to make life easier for small businesses and serve them the right support they need at the right time? And I just often used to reflect, thinking, I just wonder if this is more possible to achieve within government rather than being the person outside of government making the recommendations. So I have come into a role and feel incredibly honoured to be on the inside of government as quite fundamental changes are happening. As you say, the small business plan was released last week. That had payment at its core. And Terry, I'm sure you were delighted when you saw that kind of payment very much led the headlines last week, which was wonderful for us to see. So, of course, the small business plan includes a whole array of things from high street to access to finance to SME procurement. But of course, this is a moment in time where we're also looking at a consultation on late payment and proposed legislation. And so I kind of thought, what a great time to be in this role and hopefully have the ability to influence far-reaching legislation that could have a positive impact for years to come for small businesses at a time when they probably need it most. So that's why I kind of was really interested in the role. And yes, 7 weeks in, we're very active. There's a great team in place. Terry, you know most, if not all, of the team members. And yes, we've got lots to do. I have a 2-year term, so a lot to achieve, but we're very much on it and heads down and in business.
Yeah, yeah. And in that 2 year term, I hope to see some of the powers of the office increased. So we'll get into that a little bit in the discussion. But also, of course, you've had a big piece of research that has been released, the first, what we might call official government research on late payments, certainly since I founded Good Business Pays 5 years ago. So what has that told you?
Yeah, so it's given us, and in fact, I've been sharing these statistics ever since they came out. I may have rather naughtily made my first rookie error in sharing one of the statistics before they came out. So I was in a meeting maybe a week prior to the plan going live, and it's partly because I think there's such startling statistics. So on the kind of the size of the problem figures, the figures that particularly stand out to me: small business owners spending 86 hours chasing debt. That is not where we want small business owners spending their time. A very sad one. Every day, 38 businesses go out of business because of late payment. We definitely want to start to make inroads into kind of bringing that figure down. And then another figure, which is kind of like what's the size of the prize, is 11 billion. This is kind of like an 11 billion issue to the economy. So the more that we can reduce those hours spent chasing debt, reduce the number of businesses going out of business because of debt, and let's increase that kind of contribution to the economy. That's what the team is very much driven by. So they're the stats around payment. And then just the other stat you may have seen, Terry, when the plan went live, and it's one that I just think is kind of, it keeps us all moving in one direction, is if there was a 1% improvement on SME growth over the next couple of years, that could add 320 billion to the economy. And so this is all at the time where the country is looking for where growth and value and money is going to come from. And of course, we've got this amazing swathe of 5.5 million small businesses. So if we can make their lives easier, get their hours spent on productive tasks, that 1% of growth per SME feels quite realistic and achievable. And then if we can get to that 320 billion, that would just be amazing. So as you say, great to have those stats. And just as a final comment on that, Terry, I was with the analysis team yesterday. And what we're also, of course, now looking at is how do we measure success? So we've got those stats that kind of are now our base point. And what we're kind of looking to do is to say, well, in a couple of years' time, let's measure again, because then we can kind of say, right, has what we've done worked? What has worked? What hasn't worked? But let's kind of use those as the base point for our activity going forward.
And it's incredible to think that and we're recording this conversation around midday. So that means 19 businesses have gone out of business today, this morning, before we got on this call. It's really incredible to think that, isn't it? So,
It is. It is. So, yeah, let's sort this issue, Terry. I know you passionately believe that too.
well, and coming back again to your past experience, of course, part of the role is with government, which we might say create the sticks rather than the carrots. But you will know, having worked with Enterprise Nation, but also in big business before, there have to be carrots as well. Do you see that you have a role there to persuade big business as well as get into help small businesses as well?
Absolutely. And in fact, this carrot and stick was something that I spoke about in my interview, actually, when I interviewed for the role. Is I said, I think one of the challenges of the job, or one thing to bear in mind with the job, is how do I get the right balance of carrot and stick? And it's been interesting in the past couple of weeks. And Terry, you know me, but as a person, I'm a very carrot orientated person. So I would much rather achieve our ends through building a positive payment culture, actively encouraging large companies to pay on time, to get onto the fair payment code, showing the benefits of paying your suppliers on time. So I'm kind of very vested in this kind of campaigning approach to try and get us to that place of a very prompt payment economy. What I am slightly being challenged on is there are others who say, come on, Emma, you've got to use your teeth and also issue penalties. So that's where the legislation comes in, is looking, as you say, at potential new powers so that we could issue penalties, so we could make information more transparent. I know we'll kind of come on and talk about the detail of some of this. But of course, legislation takes time to come in, Terry. So you'll know this, the consultation is open until the 23rd of October. We would then look to get a slot in the legislation process. That kind of takes a while. So some of this may not come into effect until 2027, potentially 2028. And therefore, I do feel this kind of let's get on in the meantime to make sure we are delivering all of that. Let's get information out there. Let's encourage every business to tell every other business what their payment terms are. But also critically, let's raise the debate. Let's talk about payment much more. And we'll talk about the role of audit committees in that, where essentially every business, every company director, and I appreciate company directors have got lots and lots of things to think about, but how do we get payment on the agenda of every company director where they're thinking, actually, as well as me making my payroll and making sure that my money's coming in, the innovation's happening, am I paying people on time? And so that's kind of what we're really vested in. How do we make sure we get that positive message out there of it's just the right thing to do to pay your suppliers and other businesses on time?
Yes. Right. So let's unpack a few elements of the consultation because there's a heck of a lot in here.
There is.
It'd be great to see as many people as possible giving their input, but I think you do a great job at explaining to people what the elements of it are, and I've got them written down in front of me here. First of all, let's start with the bit around companies reporting their payment terms in annual reports as part of transparency. So for 5 years now, we've been able to take the figures from the DBT database, which would go on. But I think if we're right in saying there are two pieces to this. One piece is I think the expectation for companies to publish their payment times in an annual report will come in early next year, but there's a consultation out on whether and how the audit committee should be involved. Have I got it right there? If not, then please correct me.
That's right. And Terry, just on the audit committees, what's included in the consultation is a proposal that audit committees have a bigger role in raising the topic of payment with company directors. So audit committees would look at payment practices, include it in the annual report, and just make sure it becomes kind of a basic piece of company admin, of just kind of running the business. So yes, that is part of the consultation, and we'd welcome views on what that could look like. And many of the elements of the consultation, this is where we want to kind of finesse the detail of how this can operate. And so it's one area where we're keen to get feedback on.
Yeah. And I guess, an ex-auditor, do you think it's a good thing yourself?
Well, I think so again, so much of this is around just getting payment on the mind of directors. And the more transparent information we can have out there, I think it helps on every level. It helps potential suppliers look at information to say, is this a company with whom I want to deal? And I can now access the information on their payment terms. So from a dealing with the company perspective, it's good. And from the internal company perspective, it can't be a bad thing that company directors are forced to think about their payment practices. I don't think it's unreasonable to expect company directors to kind of think about that. So yes, I think it's a good thing and it will move us in the right direction.
And we've done a few pieces of thought leadership now where we've shown that companies with bad payment practices quite often have other financial problems sitting there in the background that you then discover later. And I suspect the investors and the directors would want to know all of that well ahead of time. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Okay, well, that's clear. So the second element, which is also, I guess, quite controversial, maybe the most controversial of the whole of the six, is maximum payment terms. And if I read it rightly, there's an intent or a proposal, should we say, not an intent, a proposal to move to maximum 60 days payment terms without exception, moving then towards 45 days over a period of time. Why is that controversial? Do you think it's doable? Is it desirable? Is it enough?
I mean, I'm going to be biased on all of these things in terms of saying I think it would be great. And I've kind of said this over the past couple of days. And you're right, the intention to move to 45 days is over 5 years. I think it would be incredible for small businesses if the UK was a place where every time you issued an invoice or signed a contract, you were doing it on maximum 45-day payment terms. I think that would be wonderful because all of this is about the flow of money. So how do we just move money quicker into the hands of small firms. And if you look at the positive impact of that, for larger companies, if they can have more innovative, healthy, less stressed small firms in their supply chain, this is a very good thing. So yes, it's is it doable? Again, this is the purpose of the consultation. We are looking forward to hearing from various sectors in terms of the viability of the maximum payment terms. And of course, you know this, Terry, that's the point of having a consultation to get responses, is we will then analyse all of those responses that come in. We will assess what they're saying and then look at the kind of finer details. So I've already engaged with a number of sector trade bodies, from manufacturing to retail, hospitality, and they're all aware the consultation is out there. We're seeing very early indications that we should get a good number of responses. There's a lot of interest in this topic, and this is why it's important for us to hear particularly those sector voices around the viability of it. But I think it would be a fine thing if we could move towards that ideal 45-day vision.
But of course, we're not saying I don't think that 45 days is good for a small business to get paid in, but there are some sectors where, and I think the example that I was given quite recently, which is understandable, is if you're shipping stuff from China and it's en route on a ship and takes more than 45 days to arrive in the UK, it perhaps would be unreasonable to say, well, let's pay the bill before the goods have even arrived at the dockside. Those are the presumably the kind of exceptions that need to be thought through, I guess, in this
Uh,
process.
So there's that, and there's also, Terry, the element of long supply chains. So if you have, lots of companies in your supply chain, what's the viability of one payment going down to the end of that in a 45 or 60-day time period?
Yeah.
So this is and I was speaking to somebody this morning, and the question was, why is payment still such an issue in this economy? In terms of, Terry, you know how long as a government everyone's been trying to kind of address this issue, to which my response is because it's a multi-layered and quite a complex area. And I always try and simplify things, that of course you've ultimately got someone who's paying an invoice and somebody who's waiting for receipt of payment of an invoice. And there's there can be issues on both sides. How do we get the small business to a point where they're doing the contracting right, they're doing the raising of the invoices right? But then how do you work with the large business on their processes, identifying SMEs? So we're kind of working on both sides, but you're right, we are expecting to hear from certain sectors who raise these points with us on times of shipping, logistics, length of supply chains, and the viability of those payment terms.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that makes sense. The next one I've got on my list was the mandatory interest of payments on late paid invoices. This, of course, is when small companies they're being paid late, and people say, well, why don't you just apply the interest you're entitled to do through current systems? Of course, they don't want to
Yep.
because they don't want to upset their big customer, and so they don't. How is this bit going to be different?
So, and there's also one other element of what you've just mentioned. So, quite often, small businesses may sign a contract where the rate of interest is lower than the statutory rate. So, there's been a couple of issues, as you say, small businesses don't want to apply it, and there hasn't been an automatic application. And secondly, they may have signed something that says it would be a lower rate. So this proposal is around making it automatic that on any late paying invoice, interest is automatically applied at 8% above the Bank of England base rate. So this is where we're kind of looking for feedback on this element. And then, of course, we want to work through the finer details of how that is paid. But of course, the other element to this, Terry, is we're also asking large companies to report on the amount of interest owing due to late payments and the amount of interest that has been paid. So that's just the other element of the interest, automatic application of interest at the 8% above Bank of England rate, plus reporting from the company how much interest is owed and of which how much interest has been paid.
Right. And that 8%, how did the 8% figure arrive? How did it come around?
So
8%.
that's the statutory rate above the Bank of England rate that government is saying there would be an automatic application. So then you don't get contracts with different rates being put forward.
Got it. Okay. The uh, construction industry is one that in the past the Small Business Commissioner hasn't really worked in the construction area. I've never understood why, but that's sort of a historical thing. But I see
Yep.
in this consultation there is a proposal to prohibit the use of retention clauses, which is a big deal in that sector. Is that anything you've got a view on, or is it for someone else outside your area in the construction sector to comment on?
Well, no, so that is something that we're including in the consultation. So we're looking for views from the sector on this. So as you say, retention payments and retention sort of account holding is a major issue. And therefore it's just the reason why it kind of fits within this consultation is because it sits within the general concept of withholding funds. When a business feels that they've delivered a certain service and they're questioning why those funds are being withheld. So retention payments sits within the sphere of that. So we are looking for particular input from construction sector. And again, I've spoken to the likes of Build UK, Make UK, who are coming forward with their views on that particular element.
Good. Same question, actually, or similar question, which isn't in the consultation, but is in another consultation,
Mhm.
is how what you're doing here and the department is doing um, sort of matches up with the Public Sector Procurement Act one, because there
Yes.
is a consultation out at the moment. And again, it slightly troubled me when I read it, but I may have read it wrongly, which looked as if it was saying that local authorities or NHS trusts might be able to pay in 60 days, which is where we at Good Business Pays get a lot of complaints from people saying the NHS, we've been waiting 12, I think yesterday I got one, 12, 13 months they've been waiting to get
Oh,
paid by a
wow.
trust.
Yeah.
So is there any rowing back of the 30-day commitment in the Public Sector Procurement Act promise?
So no, there isn't. And I would just say that so that has come from, as you know, from Cabinet Office. That is a consultation, and we are in close cooperation with colleagues at Cabinet Office around that consultation. And there is absolute partnership consensus around what fair payment terms look like. So yes, we've also seen that consultation out there, Terry. We have spoken closely with the SME policy team at Cabinet Office, and we've got a session on this next week. But as I say, that is at consultation stage. And so I'm sure Cabinet Office will take feedback on board from that consultation as well.
Right.
I should say the business that you mentioned that hasn't been paid for kind of 12 months, please send them to our casework team. We have an ever-growing relationship with the Cabinet Office team who investigate procurement, so the procurement and payment review system. So we work with that team. So if cases come into us, we now send that to that team, but we also follow the case through to the point of resolution. So please kind of do send that our way.
That's great. And anybody viewing this can go straight to you now as well.
Straight to us, even though, as you know, public authority is not in our remit, but we
Yeah,
now have that connection with Cabinet Office so we can make sure that we're working together to kind of get the cases resolved.
that's great. I want to come back to the bit around the extended powers, in particular to fine companies, the proposal that you might be able to fine companies for persistent late payment. Um, can you tell us how that might work?
Well, so again, we're looking at the finer details of this because there's a couple of elements. What is the definition of persistent? So we're looking at persistent offenders are probably going to be businesses that are repeatedly paying about 25% of their invoices late. Again, we're looking for feedback on this so we can kind of confirm and clarify what we essentially kind of say is repeated offences. And then in terms of the penalties could be connected to the interest owing from the large companies. So if a large company is publishing its payment, it's showing the interest owed, it's showing how much interest of that owing has been paid. The penalty could be a percentage and potentially more than the interest that's owing. So that's potentially what we could look at as a penalty payment. So details of that to be worked through. But again, we're looking forward to kind of getting the feedback to the consultation around that particular what is a repeat offender and then kind of the penalty application.
Yeah, that's really interesting because this last month has been the first month where the report that DBT put together has both the percentage of invoices paid late, but the value of the invoices paid late. So just an example, I'm not going to name the company for obvious reasons, but a large company who reported just a few days ago their last 6 months' performance only paid 3% of their invoices late. So it's not a client, but the amount of value,
Value.
£420 million
Okay.
over 6 months. 8% of that's 33 million, a very large chunk. And so I think it's probably worth looking at, the VAT, when you talk about the money going through to small businesses and businesses and flowing through the supply chain. That's one business out of obviously 5,000 that report. There's
Yeah.
a big prize, I suspect, of just actually getting those late payments paid on time.
Absolutely. And Terry, I know you agree with this as well, that sort of by the fact you're even able to cite that example to me is because of increased transparency in reporting. And this is, and I wrote a post on this morning, this is almost kind of a single aim of the legislation. How do we get more information out there around current performance so we can increase the transparency, which, because without that, we're not able to see what's going on. So, of course, that will enable us to see good actors, bad actors, value kind of going through or not going through. So it's a continuation of let's make sure that essentially prompt payment or payment terms are much more transparent so we can then act on the basis of that data and evidence.
Brilliant. Okay. So now I'm getting towards the end. What I haven't asked you, of course, and I know you do have these because I've heard you speak a couple of times already, is you've got some areas that already you think are opportunity areas as the Small Business Commissioner to highlight and work on. Would you like to again recap what those big areas are of opportunity that you think we've
Would
got?
love to. And this is the thing, and this is where I kind of say again, Terry, that the legislation is so important and we're desperately kind of looking for those responses to the consultation because we're very interested in views from different sectors. But as that will be a kind of a next 2 years process, what we don't want to be doing is saying, well, let's just kind of leave it all to legislation. There's kind of things we want to be doing in the meantime. So yes, you have heard me say this before, but I see digital enablement as a huge sort of potentially powerful force for us. So we're working super closely across government around digital adoption for small businesses. Again, Intuit's brand is on here, but small companies who use software such as Intuit get paid much quicker. The processes there in place. So we're working on digital adoption at a micro firm level. And then we also want to say, and this kind of goes back to the point I made at the very beginning, how do we use this incredibly enabling open finance leadership position that the UK has got, take bank and accounting transaction data in order to say we can see what happening with payments. How do we allocate some kind of score to make sure that businesses say, actually, I'm here now with my payment terms. How do I improve? So we are hoping to work with the Centre for Finance, Innovation and Technology. It's known as CFIT for short. And we're looking to do a prompt payment coalition with them, where we look at the concept of, can we come up with the idea of a prompt payment score that we apply to all businesses? And this is where it kind of comes back to the more information we have on how businesses are performing, the more evidence that gives us to go out and talk about the topic of prompt payment, which then gets others thinking, oh, well, how are we dealing when it comes to prompt payment? Okay, well, let's use this kind of our transaction data, find out where we are, but also look to improve. So lots of positive comms around that. And then, Terry, I know you're a big supporter of this, but of course, our Fair Payment Code is the vehicle through which we use to celebrate good practice. So we're doing lots of work to encourage more larger companies to sign up to the Fair Payment Code because we want to show, A, what good looks like, but also to show if a big company in a certain sector can do these things. It can sort its processes, identify SMEs, and it can pay them within 30 or 45 days. What are the reasons for others in that particular sector for not being able to do the same? And in fact, Terry, it was at a recent event of yours that I took away a brilliant report produced by Intuit, which was their chief procurement officer, who has actually written a guide saying Intuit has managed to do this. Here's how we did it. And I love the fact it kind of says, you know, you need to get your board on side, you need to show how it's possible to do. But I think guides like that are very helpful for other large companies who want to do the right thing, but just need help on how to do it. So as the consultation process continues, as hopefully we move towards legislation, what myself and the team are working on is how do we manage enabling digital technology and really use that to its full effect? How do we make sure we've got the prompt payment message fully going out to market? And how do we make sure that all of those businesses who are hopefully listening to those comms and then doing something about it, how do we get them onto the fair payment code? So we've got this wonderful virtuous circle. So lots to do, but yeah, we've got a very active team working on it.
Brilliant. Yes, it's so good to hear so much positivity. Anything else you'd like to say before we close today's show?
No, well, just thanks for the opportunity, Terry. And we need people like you who are holding us accountable, responding to the consultation, which, of course, we're going to look forward to your response. And yeah, Terry, I'd love to come back in a year's time just to say, you know, have we had an impact? As I say, kind of those metrics that we shared at the beginning, this is kind of what we're looking at. Can we save business owners time? Can we save businesses by kind of sorting payment? And how do we get more of that money back into the economy? So thanks again for the opportunity, and would love to return to share with you what we've been up to and the impact it's having.
And the consultation is open until what date?
23rd of October.
23rd of October. So we'll put the link in with the video and in with
Great.
the podcast so you can go straight to it. Emma, thank you very much for your time today.
Thank you so much, Terry.